If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll continue. The night of December 24th descended upon London with that characteristic haste of Christmas Eve. The streets of Mayfair glowed with golden lights strung in the trees, and the movement of cars gradually diminished as families retreated for their private celebrations. The Gilded Spoon restaurant, one of the most sophisticated in the city, kept its doors open for those who preferred to celebrate away from home, amidst the discreet luxury of tables with white linen tablecloths and crystal glasses reflecting the soft light of the chandeliers. Raphael Meadows parked his imported sedan in the reserved spot and adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror. At 38, he had built a real estate empire that placed him among the most influential entrepreneurs in the capital. He had an apartment in Kensington with a park view, a collection of Swiss watches, and access to social circles many only dreamed of reaching. But that night, as he crossed the pavement towards the restaurant entrance, he felt something all the money couldn't disguise, a deep emptiness that had accompanied him for years. The reservation was in his name. Table for two near the window, with a view of the illuminated garden. Patricia Sterling, the woman with whom he had exchanged messages in recent weeks through an exclusive app for high-net-worth individuals, had agreed to meet him there. She was a lawyer, came from a traditional family, and had the profile he imagined suitable for someone in his position. Their online conversations flowed well. Raphael allowed himself to entertain a timid hope that perhaps finally he could build something real with someone. He arrived 15 minutes early, as was his custom. He sat at the table, declined the wine offered by the sommelier, and asked for sparkling water only. He wanted to be completely present, attentive, available. He looked around and saw families gathered, couples holding hands, excited children pointing at the Christmas decorations. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere. He, in turn, had always felt like a visitor in his own life. 20 minutes after the agreed time, Patricia arrived. Raphael recognized her immediately from the photos. She was elegant, carried herself regally, and wore a navy blue dress that surely cost a fortune. When she entered the dining room, some customers turned their heads. Raphael stood up, attempted a smile, and waved discreetly. Patricia saw him, walked towards the table, but stopped 3 steps away. Her gaze swept over Raphael from head to toe, a cold and calculated assessment that lasted only seconds but felt like an eternity. Then she said loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear, "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. You're not what I expected." Raphael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Conversations at nearby tables ceased. Everyone was looking. Patricia turned and left the restaurant with the same ease with which she had entered. The glass door closed behind her, and the sound echoed in Raphael's chest like a final verdict. He remained standing there, unable to move. The maître d' approached, embarrassed, and murmured something about bringing the menu when he was ready. Raphael nodded mechanically and sat back down. He remained there alone before the table set for two. The surrounding families resumed their conversations, but he knew some were still watching him out of the corners of their eyes. The humiliation burned. It wasn't the first time he'd felt rejected, but never so publicly, so cruelly. He had built an entire life trying to prove he was enough. Enough for the parents who abandoned him as a child. Enough for the bosses who exploited him when he started working at 15. Enough for the investors who doubted his ideas. And now, even with all the success he had accumulated, he still heard the same sentence. "You are not enough." The Christmas lights flickered outside the window, indifferent to his pain. Raphael looked at his own hands and noticed they were trembling. He tried to control his breathing, but the lump in his throat tightened. Then, for the first time in many years, he felt tears well up. He tried to hold them back, but it was too late. They streamed silently down his face as he remained seated, motionless, unable to react. It was at that moment that a child's thin voice broke the silence around him. "Why are you crying, sir?" Raphael looked up and saw a small girl next to the table. She was no more than 5 years old, wore a simple but well-kept red dress, and held a teddy bear worn by time. The child's brown eyes stared at him with genuine curiosity, without judgment, without pity. just pure interest. He quickly wiped his face with the back of his hand and tried to smile, but couldn't. I'm fine, he murmured. His voice choked. The girl tilted her head to the side, clearly unconvinced. My mummy says when people cry it's because they're sad. Are you sad, sir? Before Raphael could answer, a young woman rushed towards the table. She appeared to be between 25 and 30, wore a simple apron over a white blouse and jeans, and her brown hair was tied in a hurried ponytail. Her face expressed panic. Alice! My goodness, I told you not to leave there. The woman held the girl's hand firmly but without aggression. Then she turned to Raphael, clearly embarrassed. Sir, I'm so sorry. She shouldn't be here. I apologize for the inconvenience. Raphael realized the woman worked there, probably backstage in the kitchen or in some support role. She looked exhausted and worried, like someone who couldn't afford to make mistakes. It was no bother, Raphael said, his voice still weak. She just asked if I was okay. The girl, Alice, pulled her mother's hand and pointed at Raphael. Mommy, he's crying. We can't leave him crying alone on Christmas. The girl's mother looked at Raphael for the first time, really, and something in her gaze changed. Perhaps she recognized in him the same pain she knew herself. Perhaps it was just natural empathy. But she didn't run away as Raphael expected. Sir, again, I apologize. I'm Lucy. I'm working here today, helping out. It's just that the manager needed someone to look after his young son while his wife is traveling, and I already do odd jobs here from time to time, so I accepted. But I brought my daughter, because I had no one to leave her with. She should be back there in the staff room, but, well, a child is a child. Raphael just nodded, indicating he understood. Lucy made to take Alice away, but the girl resisted. Mommy, look! Alice let go of her mother's hand and extended the teddy bear towards Raphael. Here, he hugs and makes everything okay. Every time I get sad, I hug him, and it gets better. Raphael looked at the worn toy, clearly much loved. The generosity of the gesture hit him like a punch to the chest. He couldn't speak. He just reached out and lightly touched the bear's head. Thank you, he managed to say, his voice almost fading. Alice smiled, satisfied. Then, with a child's characteristic spontaneity, she asked, Don't you want to have dinner with us? There's food in the back. It's not from the restaurant. It's food my mummy made, but it's tasty. We can share. Lucy blushed. Alice, no. The gentleman certainly has commitments. We can't. I accept, Raphael interrupted. The words came out before he could think about them. He himself was surprised. If it's no trouble for you, I would really like to. Lucy stared at him, incredulous. Sir, are you sure? It's nothing luxurious. It's just a small room where the staff stay. I brought a packed meal from home. It's rice, beans, chicken, nothing compared to what they serve here. Raphael stood up from the chair. For the first time since he had entered the restaurant, he felt something beyond pain. I'm sure, if you'll allow me. Alice jumped for joy and took his hand without hesitation. Come, I'll show you. Lucy still seemed hesitant, but she nodded. She looked around, making sure none of the managers were watching, and gestured for Raphael to follow them. The three crossed the main dining room towards a side corridor that led to the back of the restaurant. Some people looked curious, but Raphael didn't care. For the first time that night, he didn't feel judged. The staff room was small and Spartan. It had an old formica table, some mismatched chairs, a microwave on top of a low cabinet, and a small mini-fridge in the corner. There was an old sofa against the wall where Alice had probably spent much of the night. On the table was Lucy's packed meal, still closed, and a half-empty bottle of soda. Lucy indicated one of the chairs to Raphael and carefully opened the packed meal. The smell of home-cooked food filled the room. White rice, beans cooked with pieces of sausage, seasoned shredded chicken, and toasted cassava flour. It was simple, but Raphael felt his stomach rumble. He realized he had completely forgotten to eat during the day, consumed by the anxiety of the meeting. It's not much, but it's enough to share, Lucy said, taking 2 plastic plates from a bag nearby. She served generous portions for Raphael and Alice, leaving less for herself, Raphael noticed. "Please, serve the same amount for yourself," he said gently. "I don't want you to—" "It's all right," Lucy interrupted with a tired smile. "I already ate earlier. This is more than enough." Raphael knew she was lying, but he didn't insist. Alice was already eating with her hands, picking up pieces of chicken and dividing them into 3 equal parts on the table. "One for you, one for me, and one for Mommy," she announced, proud of the fair division. Raphael picked up the plastic fork and brought the first mouthful to his lips. The taste was simple, but there was something in it that touched a forgotten part of his soul. It wasn't just food, it was affection. It was care. It was something he hadn't experienced since he was a child, before everything fell apart. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Alice swung her legs in the chair, humming a Christmas song she must have learned at school. Lucy watched her daughter with tenderness, but Raphael noticed the worry in her eyes. She was there because she needed the money. She probably raised her daughter alone, doing several jobs to pay the bills. And yet she had shared her food with a stranger without hesitation. "May I ask something?" Raphael said, breaking the silence. Lucy looked up. "Of course." "Why did you do this? Why did you bring me here?" She took a moment to answer. She stirred her beans with her fork thoughtfully. "Because I know what it's like," she said finally, her voice low. "I know what it's like to be treated as if you're not enough. I know what it's like to be alone when everyone else is celebrating. And I thought that no one deserves to go through that, especially on Christmas." Raphael felt the lump in his throat return. "You saw what happened out front." It wasn't a question, but Lucy nodded anyway. "I did, and I thought it was very cruel. You didn't deserve that. You don't even know me. I don't need to know you to know that no one deserves to be humiliated like that." Alice, who was listening attentively to the conversation, extended the teddy bear to Raphael again. "Here, hug him now." Raphael took the toy and, to his own surprise, hugged it. He felt ridiculous for an instant. A millionaire, businessman hugging a teddy bear in a staff room. But then he realized he didn't feel ridiculous. He felt human. For the first time in a long time, he felt human. "Thank you, Alice," he said, returning the bear to the girl. "You were right. He really does help." The girl beamed. "I told you so." Lucy got up to get more soda and refilled their 3 plastic cups. When she sat back down, Raphael observed her attentively. She had tired but kind eyes, calloused hands of someone who worked hard, and a quiet dignity he rarely saw in people. From his social circle. "May I know a little about you?" Raphael asked. "If it's not invasive." Lucy shrugged. "There's not much to tell. I'm 27. I've been raising Alice alone since she was born. Her father, well, he didn't want anything to do with us when he found out about the pregnancy. I work 3 different jobs to pay for rent, school, food. It's tight, but we manage. And Alice is my reason to keep going, you know. She's everything." "Mummy's the best mommy in the world," Alice interrupted, hugging her mother around the neck. Lucy smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. "And you're the best daughter in the world." Raphael felt a pang of envy, not of their situation, but of the love they shared, the bond they had. He possessed everything in material terms, but none of that. Absolutely nothing. "And you?" Lucy asked, interrupting his thoughts. "What brought you here? Besides the situation from before, I mean. What made you agree to dinner with 2 strangers?" Raphael thought carefully before answering. He didn't want to lie, but he also didn't know if he could put into words the turmoil he felt. I built an entire life chasing things I thought would make me happy. Money, success, recognition. I achieved all of it. But I realized tonight that I'm still empty. And when your daughter asked why I was crying, it was the first time in years someone seemed to genuinely care. Not about what I have or what I can offer, just about the fact that I was hurting. That touched me. Lucy stared at him for a long moment. "I understand that," she said softly. "I've spent my whole life being discarded. By my family when I got pregnant. By Alice's father. By bosses who paid me less than I was worth. I know what it's like to be treated as if you're disposable, as if you don't matter. But you do matter, Raphael said with conviction. Anyone who looks at you and Alice can see that. You have something most people search for their whole lives and never find. What? True love. Purpose. Each other. Lucy blinked rapidly, clearly moved. Alice, sensing the heavy atmosphere, got out of her chair and started jumping around the room, singing louder now. Raphael and Lucy laughed and the tension dissipated. She's amazing, Raphael commented. She's stubborn, mischievous, talks too much and never stays still, Lucy replied, but the pride was evident in her voice. But yes, she's amazing. They finished eating and Lucy collected the plates. Raphael tried to help, but she insisted he stay seated. Alice, meanwhile, had found some papers and pens in a drawer and started drawing on the floor. Raphael got down and sat beside her. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "A house," Alice replied, focused, "with a big tree and a dog, and 3 people. "Who are the 3 people?" Alice looked at him with those sincere eyes. "You, me, and Mommy." Raphael felt something break inside his chest. The child's simplicity, the way she had included him without a second thought, as if he were already a part of their lives. It was both beautiful and painful. Lucy returned and saw the 2 drawing. She said nothing, just watched, and Raphael realized she was also struggling with her emotions. Hours passed. Alice eventually started to get sleepy. She dragged the old sofa and climbed onto it, but a few minutes later she got down and walked to Raphael. Without asking permission, she climbed onto his lap and snuggled in, the teddy bear clutched against her chest. Raphael remained completely still, surprised. Lucy was about to intervene, but stopped when she saw the expression on his face. There was a tenderness there she hadn't expected. "She doesn't usually do that with strangers," Lucy murmured. "She's quite shy." "She's special," Raphael replied, carefully adjusting Alice on his lap. The girl sighed contentedly and closed her eyes. Lucy needed to go back to work. There were still some pending tasks in the kitchen, and the manager could look for her at any moment. She hesitated to leave Alice with Raphael, but he noticed and said, "I'll stay with her. I promise I'll take good care of her." "Are you sure?" "I won't be long." "I'm sure." "Go. It's all right." Lucy nodded and left the room, but her gaze as she turned was that of someone trusting something she wasn't sure she should. Raphael remained there, with the child sleeping in his lap, and for the first time in decades he felt something he no longer remembered: belonging. As if, for a few moments, he was part of something bigger than himself. The door suddenly opened and a large man in a chef's apron entered carrying a tray. He stopped when he saw Raphael there with Alice. His face hardened. "Who are you?" the chef asked, his voice suspicious. "I'm a friend of Lucy's," Raphael replied calmly. "She needed to finish some things and asked me to stay with Alice for a while." The chef assessed him from head to toe. "I've never seen you before." "That's because I just met them today." "Today?" the chef frowned. "And she left her daughter with you?" Raphael understood the suspicion. It was reasonable, but there was something in the way he held Alice with care and respect that must have conveyed sincerity, because the chef relaxed a little. "Lucy's a good woman," the chef said, placing the tray on the table. "If you hurt her or this little girl, you'll have to deal with me. Understood?" "Understood," Raphael said. "And I would never do that." The chef nodded and left. Raphael remained there, listening to Alice's soft breathing, feeling her small weight against his chest. And he realized that, for the first time he could remember, he didn't feel alone. When Lucy returned almost an hour later, she found Raphael and Alice exactly as she had left them. She smiled, tired but relieved. "She fell asleep in your lap," Lucy commented softly. "She did," Raphael confirmed. "She's very peaceful." "When she's sleeping, yes," Lucy laughed. "Awake is another story." She carefully picked up Alice, and the girl grumbled but didn't wake up. Lucy placed her on the sofa and covered her with a blanket that was there. Then she turned to Raphael. "My shift is over. I'm going to take her home. Thank you for everything today, for being kind, for not judging, for agreeing to have dinner with us. It meant a lot. Raphael stood up too. He didn't want it to end. He didn't want to go back to his empty apartment, to his empty life. But he didn't know how to say it without sounding desperate. "Thank you for having me," he said. "You saved my night. My Christmas." Lucy picked up Alice, the girl still deeply asleep. They walked together to the back parking lot, where an old, dented car was waiting. Lucy carefully placed Alice in the back seat and fastened her seatbelt. In the silent parking lot, under the dim light of a street lamp, Lucy turned to Raphael one last time. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Why did you really agree to have dinner with us? It wasn't just for Alice, was it?" Raphael looked into her eyes and decided to be honest. Completely honest. "Because for the first time in many years, someone treated me like a human being. Not like a walking wallet. Not like someone useful, but like a person. And I didn't want that feeling to end." Lucy held the car door handle, but didn't open it. She was struggling with something internally, and Raphael could see it. Then she took a deep breath and said something that completely surprised him. "Tomorrow is Christmas. We don't have anything special planned, just me and Alice. We're going to have a simple lunch at home. If you have nowhere to go, you can come spend the day with us. No one should be alone on Christmas." Raphael couldn't answer immediately. Emotion blocked his throat. When he finally spoke, his voice came out hoarse. "Are you sure?" "I am. Come. 11:30 in the morning. I'll give you the address." They exchanged phone numbers, and Lucy got into the car. Before leaving, she rolled down the window and said, "Raphael, I don't know what you're going through, but I know everyone deserves a second chance. See you tomorrow." The car drove off, leaving Raphael alone in the parking lot. He stood there for long minutes, processing everything that had happened on that impossible night. Then he walked to his own car, got in, and for the first time in years, truly smiled. But when he got home, when he entered that luxurious, empty apartment in Kensington, when he looked around and saw all that lifeless opulence, something in him changed. He looked at his phone and saw Lucy's message with the address. It was in Peckham Rye, East London, far, humble, completely different from his world, and he realized he couldn't wait to go back. Raphael woke up early on Christmas morning, something that hadn't happened in years. Normally that day was like any other for him, silent, solitary, filled with work or TV series to kill time. But that morning there was something different. There was anticipation. There was a place to go, people waiting for him. He showered calmly, chose casual clothes, but wasn't sure what was appropriate. He tried a dress shirt, found it too formal. He put on a t-shirt, it seemed sloppy. He finally opted for a light blue polo shirt and jeans, simple but respectful. He looked at himself in the mirror and realized he was nervous. When was the last time he had felt like this? When was the last time something truly mattered? While having coffee, he thought about a gift. Should he bring something for Alice? For Lucy? But what? He didn't want to seem pretentious. He didn't want them to think he was trying to buy their affection. At the same time, he couldn't arrive empty-handed, so he decided to stop at a toy store on the way and choose something simple for the girl. The store was closed, of course. It was Christmas. Raphael slapped his forehead, feeling foolish. He walked through the deserted streets of Kensington and finally found a small convenience store open. He went in and bought a simple doll, nothing too elaborate, along with chocolates and a small bouquet of flowers for Lucy. He also picked up ingredients to help with lunch: soda, ice cream, bread, cold cuts. It wasn't much, but it was something. When he got into the car and put the address into the GPS, he saw it would take almost an hour to get there. Peckham Rye was on the other side of the city. Raphael drove along the M25, passed through the A12, and gradually the landscape changed. The tall modern buildings gave way to lower, simpler constructions. The streets became narrower, the houses closer to each other. It was a different England from the one he knew, but it was no less real. As he drove, Raphael thought about everything that had happened the day before. The humiliation at the restaurant seemed distant now, almost unreal. What remained vivid in his memory Was Alice's face asking why he was crying? Lucy's kindness? The simple dinner that had meant more than any expensive meal he had ever had, and now he was going to their house, to spend Christmas. With a family he had just met, it would be madness if it weren't so necessary. He arrived at the address at 11:40. The house was small, painted light yellow, with an iron gate that creaked open. There was a tiny front yard where a guava tree grew. Raphael parked on the street, grabbed the bags and walked to the door. Before he could knock, he heard an euphoric shout from inside. "Mommy! Mommy! It's him! Uncle's here!" The door burst open, and Alice came running, still in her pajamas, hair messy. She jumped into Raphael's arms without hesitation, and he quickly had to drop the bags to hold her. The girl hugged him tightly, laughing, and Raphael felt something warm inside his chest. "You came! You really came!" Alice shouted excitedly. "I promised, didn't I?" Raphael smiled, adjusting the girl in his arms. Lucy appeared at the door right after. She wore a simple floral cotton dress and her hair loose on her shoulders. She looked younger this way, less tired than the day before. But Raphael noticed the tension in her eyes, as if she still didn't quite believe he had come. "Raphael," she said, and his name sounded different in her voice. "Come in, please. Sorry about the mess, we were still tidying up." "You don't need to apologize for anything," Raphael replied, putting Alice down and picking up the bags again. "I should be thanking you for the invitation." Alice pulled his hand insistently and dragged him inside. The house was small but clean and organized. The living room had an old but comfortable sofa, a small television on a wooden stand, and some photos hanging on the wall. Raphael recognized Alice in several of them, at different ages, always smiling, always happy. There was an artificial Christmas tree in the corner, decorated with simple ornaments and colorful fairy lights. Beneath it, 2 presents wrapped in hand-painted newspaper. Raphael felt a pang in his chest as he realized the effort Lucy had made to create a special Christmas for her daughter, even with so little. "I brought a few things," Raphael said, placing the bags on the table. "I hope you don't mind." Lucy looked inside the bags and her face changed. "Raphael, you didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." Alice was already rummaging through the bags and found the doll. Her eyes lit up. "Is it for me?" "If your mommy says yes, then yes." Lucy nodded, emotional, and Alice hugged the doll tightly. "Thank you, Uncle. Thank you." "You're welcome, little one." Lucy took the flowers and smelled them, her eyes growing moist. "It's been years since anyone gave me flowers," she murmured. "Thank you." Raphael just nodded, not knowing what to say. Her gratitude embarrassed him, because for him it was so little. But for her, clearly, it meant a lot. The morning passed with a lightness Raphael hadn't experienced in decades. Alice dragged him to the tiny backyard and showed him the plants she helped her mother care for. There were tomatoes growing in makeshift pots, and the girl explained seriously how they needed to be watered every day, but not too much, otherwise the roots would rot. Raphael listened to everything with genuine attention, fascinated by the way that child saw the world. Lucy prepared lunch in the small kitchen, and Raphael offered to help. She hesitated, but eventually accepted. He peeled potatoes while she seasoned a chicken. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, with only the sound of the knife hitting the cutting board and the radio playing Christmas songs in the background. "You know how to cook?" Lucy asked, surprised to see his skill with the knife. "I learned when I was a teenager. I worked in a restaurant washing dishes. The cook sometimes taught me a few things." "You worked washing dishes?" "And doing deliveries and cleaning offices and carrying boxes," Raphael replied. "I did a bit of everything before I managed to save enough money to start my own business." Lucy looked at him with renewed interest. "I didn't expect that. You seem like someone who always had everything." "Far from it. I grew up in shelters. I was adopted twice, returned twice. I left there at 15 and fended for myself. I built everything I have from scratch." "That's why you were so upset yesterday," Lucy said softly. "That's why that woman hurt you so much, because you had already been rejected before." Raphael stopped peeling potatoes and looked at her. "How do you know that?" Because I recognize it. I went through it too, being treated as if you're worthless, as if you're flawed. I know how much it hurts." They stared at each other for a long moment, and Raphael realized there was a connection there that went beyond sympathy. It was mutual recognition. Two people who had been broken by the world and who somehow were still standing. Alice burst into the kitchen at that moment, jumping and singing, and the tension broke. Lucy smiled and went back to seasoning the chicken. Raphael finished the potatoes, and life continued, simple and beautiful. Lunch was ready at noon. Lucy carefully set the table, using a plastic tablecloth with Christmas designs and the plates she had. There was nothing sophisticated there, but everything was arranged with care. Raphael helped bring the serving dishes and sat at the table with them. It was then that Alice asked to say a prayer. Lucy seemed surprised but nodded. The girl took their hands and closed her eyes. "Thank you, God, for the food. Thank you for my mommy, who's the best in the world. And thank you for bringing Uncle Raphael to spend Christmas with us. Amen." Raphael had to blink rapidly to hold back tears. Lucy was also emotional. They began to eat, and the chicken was delicious. Simple, but made with love. The potatoes were soft, the rice fluffy, the toasted cassava flour crunchy. It was a humble meal, but for Raphael, it was the best he had tasted in years. They talked during lunch. Alice told stories from school, imitated teachers, made Raphael truly laugh. Lucy recounted small daily events, and Raphael shared childhood memories he hadn't revisited in decades. Everything was so natural, so easy, as if they had known each other for years. After lunch, while Lucy washed the dishes, even with Raphael insisting on helping, Alice dragged him to the living room. She wanted to play, and Raphael didn't have the heart to refuse. They sat on the floor, and the girl brought out modeling clay. They made animals, houses, cars. Alice laughed at every crooked creation Raphael made, and he found himself laughing along. At one point, Alice became serious and asked, "Uncle Raphael, do you have a family?" Raphael hesitated. How to explain to a child that he was alone in the world? "No, little one, I don't." "Why?" "Because sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to, but it's okay." Alice looked at him with those eyes too deep for a 5-year-old. "You can be part of our family. We have room." Raphael felt something break inside him. He pulled Alice into a hug and held her tightly. The girl reciprocated, carefree, already returning to talk about the modeling clay. Lucy, who was watching everything from the kitchen doorway, dried her hands on a cloth and approached. She sat on the floor beside them and for the first time allowed herself to completely relax. The three stayed there, playing, talking, existing together. The hours passed too quickly. When Alice started to yawn, it was already late afternoon. Lucy took her to the bedroom for a nap, and Raphael was left alone in the living room. He looked around again, absorbing every detail of that small house. The walls with peeling paint, the patched sofa, the old television. And yet there was more life there than in his entire luxurious apartment. Lucy returned a few minutes later and sat beside him on the sofa. They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the distant sound of fireworks. "Thank you for coming," Lucy said finally. "You can't imagine how much this meant. To me and to Alice." "I should be thanking you for having me," Raphael replied. "I didn't know what this was like anymore, to be with real people, to feel part of something." Lucy looked at him sideways. "Your life is very lonely, isn't it?" "It is. Always has been, actually. But I convinced myself that I didn't need anyone, that I was stronger alone, that people only wanted to use me, and maybe many did. But yesterday, when Alice asked me why I was crying, I realized I had spent my entire life running from the only thing that truly matters. And what is that? Connection, love, belonging." Lucy nodded, understanding. "I know what it's like to try and protect yourself. After Alice's father abandoned me, I swore I'd never trust anyone again, that it was safer to be alone, and it was for a while. But it was also empty." Raphael turned to face her. "Lucy, I know we barely know each other, I know this might sound crazy, but I don't want today to be just one day. I don't want to go back to my empty life and pretend none of this happened. I want to be a part of this, of you, of Alice, if you'll let me." Lucy became very quiet. Her face showed fear, hope, doubt, all at once. "Raphael, you don't really know me. You don't know my life. You don't know the difficulties I face. You live in a completely different world from mine. When you realize that, when you see how incompatible our realities are, you'll leave, and Alice will suffer. I will suffer. I won't leave. How can you be sure? Because I've spent my whole life in that world you think is better, and it's empty, cold, soulless. Here, in this small house with the two of you, I feel something I never felt there. I feel alive." Lucy wiped a tear that ran down her face. "What if it goes wrong? What if you realize it's not what you want? What if Alice gets attached and you disappear? It won't happen, but if you need proof, I'll give it. Just don't ask me to go back to that life pretending none of this existed, because I can't anymore." Lucy took a deep breath. "Slowly. We'll try slowly. You can visit. You can spend time with us. But slowly, Raphael. Alice is my priority. I can't risk her heart. Nor yours," Raphael added softly. "Nor mine," she admitted. They stayed there, sitting side by side, and Raphael carefully took her hand. Lucy didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, and it was as if something was sealed between them, a silent agreement, a fragile but real promise. When Alice woke from her nap, still sleepy, she came straight to Raphael's lap. She snuggled there, the teddy bear clutched against her chest, and murmured, "Don't want you to leave, Uncle." "I know, little one, but I have to. But I'll come back, I promise." "When?" Raphael looked at Lucy, who nodded slightly. "Tomorrow, if your mommy lets me." Alice's eyes lit up. "Let him, Mommy. Let him." Lucy smiled, though cautiously. "I will, but now you need to let Uncle go. It's getting late." Alice didn't want to. She held Raphael tighter, refusing to let go. Raphael hugged her back and whispered in her ear, "I'll be back. You can trust me." The girl finally relented. Raphael put her down and stood up. Lucy accompanied him to the door. At the gate, they stopped. The street was quiet, and the sky was beginning to darken. "Thank you for everything, Lucy, for giving me this chance." "Don't disappoint me, Raphael, please." "I won't." He got into the car, waved to the two who were watching from the doorway, and left. As he drove back to Kensington, the difference between the two worlds became increasingly evident. The streets grew wider, the buildings taller, the people more distant, and when he finally parked in his building's garage and went up to his apartment, the feeling of emptiness hit him with full force. He walked through the spacious and well-decorated rooms, looking at the designer furniture, the panoramic view, the artworks on the walls, and he realized that none of it touched him. None of it made him feel human. It was all just stuff, cold, lifeless. Raphael picked up his phone and looked at the photo he had taken during lunch, with Alice making a funny face and Lucy laughing in the background, and he thought, "This is it. This is what I want. Not these empty walls, not this luxurious solitude, but that laughter, that connection, that life." And then, for the first time in many years, Raphael allowed himself to believe that perhaps there was still time. Perhaps he could still build something real. Perhaps it wasn't too late. He sent a message to Lucy. "Got home safely. Thanks for everything. See you tomorrow." The reply came a few minutes later. "Sleep well, Raphael. Alice is already asking when you're coming back." Raphael smiled. He put his phone aside, lay down on the king-size bed that suddenly seemed too big, and closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come easily, because for the first time in decades, he had something to look forward to at dawn. And as the city of London roared outside, indifferent and cold, Raphael Meadows allowed himself to dream of a yellow house in Peckham Rye, of a girl in a red dress, of a woman with tired but kind eyes, and of the possibility of finally finally, belonging to something greater than himself. 2 days passed. Raphael kept his promise. He visited the next day and the day after too. He brought breakfast, helped fix a leaky faucet, played on the floor with Alice until she was tired. Lucy still watched him cautiously, but he noticed her defenses beginning to yield. She smiled more, talked more, allowed herself to relax in his presence. Alice, in turn, already treated him as part of the family. She told him everything, asked his opinion on what clothes to wear, showed him the drawings she made at school. And Raphael absorbed all of it with a gratitude he couldn't even express in words. A week after Christmas, Raphael was in the living room of the house when Lucy sat beside him. Alice was sleeping in her bedroom, and they finally had a moment alone. "I need to tell you something," Lucy said, her voice serious. Raphael felt his heart race. "What?" "I'm scared, very scared, because all of this is happening too fast. Because I don't know if this is real or if it will disappear. Because when I look at you with Alice, I see something I never thought we'd see, a father, a family, and that terrifies me." Raphael took her hand. "I'm scared too, Lucy, because I don't know how to do this. I've never had a family. I never learned to truly love someone. But I'm trying, and I'll keep trying. Every day, if you let me." Lucy looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of falsity, any crack, but she found none, only raw, vulnerable sincerity. "All right," she said finally, "we'll try. But if you hurt Alice, if you hurt us, I'll never forgive you. I know, and I promise I'll do everything not to hurt you." They hugged, and Raphael felt something settle within him, a certainty that he was on the right path, that finally, after so much lost time, he had found what he was looking for. But life is never simple, and in the days to come, Raphael would be tested in ways he never imagined. Because building a family requires more than intention. It requires choices. It requires sacrifices. It requires putting others above oneself. And Raphael, who had spent his entire life prioritizing success and money, would have to learn that some things are worth more than any fortune, and that lesson was about to arrive. The following 2 weeks transformed Raphael's life in ways he never imagined possible. He woke up early, no longer out of obligation or habit, but because there was a purpose waiting for him. Some mornings he brought coffee to Lucy and Alice before she left for work. Other times he picked Alice up from school in the afternoon when Lucy was still on her second shift, and gradually that simple routine became the most important part of his days. The first time he picked Alice up from school, the teacher looked at him suspiciously. It was natural, he was an unknown man arriving to pick up a child, but Alice ran into his arms shouting "Uncle Raphael" so loudly that the whole classroom heard, and the teacher relaxed. Still, she asked to confirm with Lucy, which Raphael understood perfectly. The girl's safety came first. On the way home, Alice chatted about everything that had happened at school, who fought with whom, who cried because they lost their crayon, what song they sang in art class. Raphael listened to everything with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, and he realized that this unpretentious conversation was more meaningful than any business meeting he had ever had. Lucy, little by little, allowed Raphael to get more involved. At first, she insisted on doing everything herself, as if asking for help was a sign of weakness. But when Raphael fixed the refrigerator that had stopped working, saving her the money she would have had to spend on a technician, Lucy began to yield. It wasn't about money for Raphael. It was about being present, about showing he wasn't going to disappear. One afternoon, while Alice played in the backyard, Lucy and Raphael sat on the small back porch. She was tired, her eyes marked by sleepless nights working double shifts. Raphael noticed and asked, "Have you ever thought about going back to study, finishing university?" Lucy laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "Raphael, I can barely pay the bills. How am I going to pay for university?" "What if I helped?" She stared at him, her body stiffening. "No, I don't want your money. It's not about money. It's about you having the chance to do what you always wanted. You told me you dropped out of your education degree when you got pregnant, that you always dreamed of being a teacher. Why can't you go back?" Because that's not how it works, Raphael. Not for people like me. It could be, if you let it. Lucy shook her head, but Raphael saw that the idea had planted a seed. She wanted to believe. She was just afraid of being disappointed. Days went by, and Raphael began to notice small changes in himself. He laughed more, slept better, felt lighter, and he realized that for the first time in his life, professional success wasn't his only concern. There were more important things. There was Alice asking him to read stories before bed. There was Lucy smiling when he arrived. There were simple dinners at the small table, where conversations flowed naturally. But there were also challenges. Raphael was used to solving everything with money, and he needed to learn that not everything worked that way. When Alice lost her teddy bear in the park and cried inconsolably, Raphael immediately wanted to buy a new, better, bigger one. But Lucy stopped him. "It's not about having another teddy bear," she explained patiently. "It's about her learning that sometimes we lose things we love, and that we need to deal with it." Raphael, who had never had anyone to teach him these lessons, absorbed everything. He was learning to be part of a family, and the process was both painful and liberating. Painful because it exposed his limitations, his flaws. Liberating because it showed that he didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to be present. Alice found the teddy bear 2 days later, forgotten under the bed. She hugged it tightly and told Raphael, "See, Mommy was right. We just needed to look better." And Raphael smiled, realizing the lesson wasn't just for the girl. Things were flowing well, perhaps too well. And Raphael, who had lived long enough to know that life has a peculiar way of testing people, should have realized that something was coming. The bomb dropped on a Friday afternoon. Raphael was at the office, something that had become increasingly rare. He had delegated more responsibilities to the team, trusted his partners more, reduced his working hours. The business remained profitable, but he was no longer obsessed with it. He had other priorities now. That's when Mark, his oldest partner, entered the room without knocking. His face was tense. "Raphael, we need to talk." "What happened?" "The Japanese investor is having second thoughts. They want a face-to-face meeting before closing the contract, and it's not here, it's in Tokyo." Raphael felt his stomach tighten. That deal had been negotiated for almost a year. Millions of pounds were involved, an investment that would expand the company into the Asian market. It was the kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. "When?" "Monday. They won't accept a postponement. Either you go or they back out." Raphael looked out the office window, seeing the city stretch before him. Tokyo. It would be at least a week's trip, maybe 10 days with all the commitments. 10 days away from Alice, away from Lucy, away from the life he was building. "I need to think." Mark seemed shocked. "Think? Raphael, it's Tokyo. It's $15 million. You've spent a year chasing this." "I know, but things have changed." "Changed how? Because of that woman and her daughter?" The way Mark said that made Raphael stand up abruptly. "Watch it, Mark. Sorry, but someone needs to speak up. You're putting your professional life aside for a fantasy. You barely know these people, and now you're going to throw away the biggest opportunity of your career for what? To play family. It's not a game. Then what is it? Do you think this will last? That you, a millionaire businessman, will live happily ever after with a nanny and her daughter? Wake up, Raphael. You're running from your reality." Mark's words echoed in the silence that followed. Raphael wanted to retort, wanted to defend what he had with Lucy and Alice. But a part of him, that cynical part that had kept him protected for so long, whispered that perhaps Mark was right. Perhaps all of it really was a fantasy. Perhaps he was just postponing the inevitable. "I'll think about it until tomorrow," Raphael said finally. "Now get out of my office." Mark left, slamming the door. Raphael remained there, seated, his head spinning. Tokyo, 15 million. The opportunity to expand the empire he had built. Against what? Against simple lunches and bedtime stories. Against a woman working 3 jobs and a child with an old teddy bear. Put that way, it seemed obvious what the choice should be, but it wasn't. Raphael left the office without speaking to anyone and drove straight to Peckham Rye. He parked in front of the yellow house and stayed there for long minutes just looking, the peeling paint, the crooked gate, the tiny yard. And he thought of his apartment in Kensington with 3 suites and a panoramic view. He thought of everything he had built, everything he had achieved, and he realized that if he lost that simple little house, he would lose something he could never rebuild. But would that be enough? Would it be fair to ask Lucy and Alice to wait while he went to Tokyo to close a deal? It was only a week, 10 days at most. They would, at most, understand, wouldn't they? He knocked on the door and Alice opened it immediately. As always, she jumped into his arms and Raphael held her, feeling her small weight, the smell of children's shampoo in her hair. Lucy appeared right behind, smiling. "I wasn't expecting you today," she said. "I thought you had a meeting." "I did. It finished early." They had dinner together. Simple pasta with tomato sauce, which Alice helped make and insisted on serving. Raphael ate everything, praised it, thanked her. But he was distracted, and Lucy noticed. "Is everything okay?" she asked when they were alone after. Alice went to brush her teeth. Raphael hesitated. Should he tell her? Should he share the dilemma? Or should he simply decide alone, as he always had? "A work trip came up," he said finally. "To Japan, Monday." Lucy became very quiet. "For how long?" "A week, maybe 10 days. Is it important?" "Yes, very." She nodded slowly. "Then you should go. But I don't want to leave you." "Raphael, you have a life, a job, responsibilities. We understand that." But there was something in her tone, a resignation, that deeply bothered him, as if she already expected this to happen, as if she was already preparing for him to disappear. "Lucy, it's all right, really, we'll be fine. You'll come back in a few days, and you think I won't come back." She stared at him, and her eyes were shining. "I think that when you're there, in that world of yours, you'll realize how small this is here, how small we are compared to everything you have, and you'll make the right choice for yourself. The right choice for me is to stay here. Now you think that way, but when you're there," Alice came running back, interrupting. "Alice." The conversation. She jumped onto Raphael's lap and asked him to read a story. Raphael read, but the words came out mechanically. His mind was elsewhere, divided between 2 worlds that couldn't coexist. When Alice finally fell asleep, Raphael stayed a little longer. He and Lucy sat on the sofa in silence. The television was on, but neither of them was paying attention. "I'll be back," Raphael said finally. "I promise I'll be back." "Don't make promises you can't keep," Lucy replied, her voice tired. "Lucy, look at me." Raphael turned her face towards him. "I'll be back. You and Alice are the most important thing that has ever happened in my life. I won't throw that away for a business deal, no matter how big." "But it's your work, Raphael. It's what you've built. You can't just ignore that." "I'm not ignoring it. I'm making a choice, and my choice is you." Lucy wanted to believe. Raphael saw it in her eyes. But the fear was stronger. The fear of being abandoned again, of not being enough again, of Alice getting attached and then suffering again. Raphael left that night with a heavy heart. He drove back to Kensington and spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling. Tokyo or Peckham Rye, 15 million or a family, the choice that would define the rest of his life. On Saturday morning, he woke up with his decision made. He called Mark. "I'm going. Book everything." On the other end of the line, Mark let out a sigh of relief. "You made the right decision, Raphael. This will change everything for us." "Yes, it will change everything." He hung up and sat there on the bed, feeling miserable. But it was the logical decision, right? It was a week, just a week. He would come back, prove to Lucy and Alice that he hadn't abandoned them, and everything would be fine. Or not. Raphael spent Saturday packing for the trip. Passport, documents, clothes, and trying to ignore the voice in his head that said he was making a mistake. He sent a message to Lucy, letting her know he was traveling early Monday morning. She replied, "Have a good trip. Take care." Cold, distant, preparing for the inevitable abandonment. On Sunday, Raphael went to say goodbye. Alice was excited, showing new drawings, telling stories. She didn't fully understand what the trip meant. She just knew Uncle Raphael was going far away. "Will you be back soon?" she asked, holding the teddy bear. "Yes, little one, in a week." "Is a week a long time?" "It's a little bit, but it goes by fast." "Will you miss me?" Raphael knelt to be at her height. "I'll miss you both very much, you and your mommy." "Then why are you going?" And there it was, the question, the simple question from a 5-year-old that cut through all justifications and rationalizations. "Why are you going?" "Because of work," Raphael replied. Alice tilted her head. "Is work more important than us?" The silence that followed was deafening. Lucy, watching from a distance, froze, and Raphael felt something break inside him. Because the honest answer, the answer his actions demonstrated, was yes. At that moment, he was choosing work. He was choosing money, success, the security of what he already knew. He was choosing against what he had promised. "No," he said finally, his voice choked. "You are more important. Much more important. Then stay." "I can't, little one. I promised I would go." "But you also promised you'd stay with us. You said, 'We were your family now.'" Each word was a stab. Alice wasn't trying to manipulate. She was just being honest in the way only children can be. And Raphael realized he was about to become another adult who disappointed her, another who promised and didn't deliver, another who chose other things above her. He hugged Alice tightly and stood up. Lucy accompanied him to the door. Outside, away from Alice, she finally said what she was thinking. "I knew it. I knew this would happen." "Lucy, it's only a week." "It's not about the week, Raphael. It's about the choice. When life asks you to choose between us and your world, you will always choose your world. Because it's easier. Because it's safer. Because deep down, you still don't believe we are enough." "That's not true." "Then stay. Cancel the trip. Show me and Alice that we truly matter." Raphael opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because cancelling the trip meant losing 15 million. It meant disappointing his partners. It meant putting the business at risk. And he couldn't do that. He couldn't be so irresponsible. Or maybe he could but didn't want to. "I have to go," he said finally. "But I'll be back. I promise." Lucy shook her head, tears finally streaming down. "Don't come back, Raphael, because when you go, you'll realize it's easier to stay there. That it's easier to go back to your life before. And we'll just be a beautiful memory. A different Christmas. A fantasy you lived for a few weeks." "You're wrong." "Am I? Then prove it to me. Cancel the trip. Stay." Raphael stood there, paralyzed, torn in two, and Lucy saw the hesitation. She saw the doubt, and she knew she had lost. "Go," she said, her voice breaking. "Go and don't look back. It's easier that way for everyone." "Lucy, please go, before Alice sees you leave, before it gets even harder." Raphael wanted to argue, wanted to promise again, but the words died in his throat. Because deep down, he knew Lucy was right. He was doing exactly what she feared. He was choosing the security of the known instead of the risk of love. He got into the car and left. In the rearview mirror, he saw Lucy standing at the gate, wiping her eyes, and he knew he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The night was long. Raphael packed his bags, confirmed his flight, reviewed his documents. Everything was ready. The next morning, the driver would pick him up at 5 a.m. He would be at the airport at 6, on the plane at 8, in Tokyo the next day, and then a week of meetings, negotiations, formal dinners, a week doing what he always did, being who he always was. And Alice and Lucy would be in Peckham Rye, in the Yellow House, learning to live without him, as they always had, as they always would. Raphael looked around. The empty apartment, the white walls, the designer furniture, the city view, and he realized that none of it meant anything. It was just space occupied by things. There was no life. There was no love. There was nothing that mattered. He picked up his phone and looked at the last photo with Alice and Lucy. The girl was making a funny face, her mother was smiling. And he, in the middle, finally had a true smile on his face. And then he knew. He knew that if he got on that plane, he would lose that forever. He knew that all the money in the world wasn't worth more than that smile. He knew he had spent his whole life chasing the wrong things, and that finally, he had the chance to do things differently. Raphael looked at the clock. Midnight. He still had time. He could still change. And then, without much thought, without planning, without calculating the risks, he grabbed his car keys and left. The city slept as Raphael crossed London for the last time that night. The streets were empty. Traffic lights blinked yellow and only a few cars circulated on the deserted avenues. He drove in silence, no music, no distractions, just the sound of the engine and the thoughts spinning in his head. What was he doing? It was midnight on Sunday. Lucy and Alice were certainly sleeping. He would knock on the door, wake them up and say what? That he had changed his mind, that he wasn't going to travel. After everything he had said, after already having made the choice, would she believe him? Or would she think it was just a desperate gesture, an empty promise he would break the next time life tested him? But he had to try. Because if he got on that plane tomorrow, if he went to Tokyo, if he chose the 15 million instead of them, he would never have peace again. He would never be able to look in the mirror again without feeling disgusted with himself. He would be another man who had the chance to do things differently and chose the easy path. And Raphael was tired of the easy path. He was tired of being alone, surrounded by things. He was tired of waking up every morning without purpose, without connection, without love. Those 2 weeks with Alice and Lucy had shown him there was another way to live, and he wasn't going to waste that. He arrived in Peckham Rye at almost 1 in the morning. The street was dark, silent. The yellow house seemed to be sleeping too, with all the lights out. Raphael parked and stood there for a moment, just looking. His heart pounded. His hands were sweating. He was about to do something that went against all logic, against all the pragmatism that had built his life. And for the first time, it felt right. He got out of the car and walked to the gate. He took a deep breath, and he rang the doorbell. Nothing happened for long seconds. Raphael rang again. Then a light came on in the front window. He saw a shadow move. The door opened carefully, just a crack, and Lucy appeared. She wore an old bathrobe and her hair was messy. Her eyes, even in the dark, showed she had been crying. "Raphael, what? It's 1 in the morning. What are you doing here?" "I'm not going." Lucy blinked, confused. "What?" "I'm not going to Tokyo. I'm not traveling. I'm not leaving you." She became completely still. "Raphael, you can't just—" "I can, and that's what I'm doing." He took a step forward, and Lucy opened the door completely, still processing. "You were right. When Alice asked me if work was more important than you, and I hesitated, I realized what I was doing. I was repeating the same pattern. I was putting money, success, security above what truly matters. And I can't do that. Not again. Not with you. But what about the deal? And the 15 million? To hell with the 15 million. Lucy took a step back, shocked. "Raphael, you can't... This is your life. It's your work. You can't throw everything away for you, for love, for a chance to have something real." "Yes, I can, Lucy. And that's exactly what I'm doing." Tears began to stream down her face. "What if you regret it? What if in a few months you look back and realize you lost everything because of us? What if you blame us for it?" Raphael held her shoulders firmly. "I won't regret it. And do you know why? Because I've already had everything. I had the money, the success, the recognition, and it was empty, completely empty. But when I'm here with you and Alice, when I have dinner at that small table, when I read bedtime stories, when Alice hugs me and calls me uncle, I feel something I've never felt before. I feel alive. And that is worth more than any amount of money." Lucy covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Raphael pulled her into a hug, and she didn't resist. She collapsed against his chest, years of pain and rejection, finally finding a safe place to flow out. "I'm so scared," she whispered. So scared to believe and be destroyed again. No, I'm scared too. But for the first time in my life, I'm willing to feel that fear. Because you and Alice are worth it. Worth everything. They stood there, embracing in the doorway, as the night stretched around them. Then a sleepy voice came from inside the house. "Mommy!" "Who is it?" Alice appeared, rubbing her eyes, the teddy bear dragging on the floor. When she saw Raphael, her eyes widened. "Uncle Raphael, you're back!" She ran to him, and Raphael picked her up immediately. Alice hugged him tightly, and Raphael felt something adjust inside him, as if all the pieces had finally found their places. "You didn't leave," Alice said, her voice full of relief. "I didn't, and I won't." "Never?" "Never." Alice looked at her mother, who was still crying, but now also smiling. "Mommy, Uncle stayed. He didn't leave." Lucy just nodded, unable to speak. The three entered the house, and Raphael closed the door behind him. Alice insisted he sit on the sofa and climbed onto his lap, refusing to let go. Lucy brought water and sat beside them. "You're really not going to travel?" she asked, still needing to confirm. "No, I'm going to call Mark right now and cancel everything." "But no buts, Lucy. I've made my decision, and it's final." Raphael picked up his phone and dialed. It was almost 2 in the morning, but it didn't matter. Mark answered on the third ring, his voice sleepy and irritated. "Raphael, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Mark. In fact, it's better than ever, but I need to tell you something. I'm not going to Tokyo." Silence on the other end. Then, "What?" "Raphael, are you joking?" "I'm not. Cancel everything. Cancel the flight, the hotels, the meetings. I'm not going." "Ah. You crazy? We're going to lose this deal. We're going to lose 15 million. I know, and it's all right." "No, it's not all right. Raphael, you can't." "I can, Mark, and I am. You're a partner too. You can go in my place, or we lose the deal. Whatever the outcome, I accept it, because I've found something worth more than any business deal." "Is it because of that woman? You're throwing everything away for—" "Watch what you say, Mark." Raphael's voice turned cold. "Yes, it's because of her, and her daughter, because they are the most important thing that has ever happened to me. And if you don't understand that, then perhaps it's time we rethink our partnership." Another silence. Then Mark sighed, defeated. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely." "All right, I'll go to Tokyo. I'll try to save the deal. But Raphael, you know that after this things will change. The company won't be the same." "I know. And it's all right. Some things need to change." He hung up and looked at Lucy, who had been watching everything in silence. "Done. It's done." "You really did it," she whispered, incredulous. "I did. And I would do it again. 1,000 times." Alice, who had listened to everything without fully understanding, just tightened her hug. "Now you're really part of our family, Uncle Raphael. Forever." "Forever," Raphael repeated, kissing the top of the girl's head. They stayed there, the three of them hugging on the sofa until Alice fell back asleep. Lucy took her to bed, and when she returned, she sat beside Raphael. She took his hand and held it tightly. "Thank you," she said, "for choosing us, for showing that there are people who stay, that there are people who don't abandon. Thank you for giving me the chance to be that person, for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself." They kissed for the first time that dawn. It was a soft kiss, full of promises and hopes, a kiss that sealed not only a romantic relationship, but a partnership, a family, a shared life. Raphael returned home as the sun began to rise, but only to pick up a few things. He knew he would no longer stay in that empty apartment. His place now was in Peckham Rye, in the yellow house, with Lucy and Alice. The following weeks were about adjustments. Mark went to Tokyo and, surprisingly, managed to close the deal. The Japanese agreed to negotiate with him, and the company expanded into the Asian market as planned. But Raphael was no longer at the center of everything. He delegated, trusted, let go of the reins, and he discovered that the business functioned well without his constant presence, perhaps even better. He started working less, being more present. He picked Alice up from school every day. He helped Lucy with household chores. They cooked together, laughed together, sometimes argued, but always reconciled. And little by little, that little yellow house became more than a house. It became a home. Raphael enrolled Lucy in an evening education degree at university. She resisted at first, but he insisted. And when she finally accepted, when she had her first class and came home with her eyes shining with enthusiasm, Raphael knew he had done the right thing. 3 months after cancelling the trip to Tokyo, Raphael made another important decision. He sold his apartment in Kensington and bought a larger house in Peckham Rye. Not in the same Mayfair neighbourhood where he used to live, but there, near Lucy and Alice, a simple but comfortable house with 3 bedrooms, a yard and room to grow. "Are you sure about this?" Lucy asked when he showed her the papers. "You're giving up everything you've built." "I'm not giving up. I'm just redirecting and building something new, something better." They moved in together. Alice got her own room, which she painted pink with Raphael's help. Lucy chose every piece of furniture, every curtain, every detail, and Raphael realized how important it was for her to have a voice in those decisions. She had never had that before. She had always lived in the leftover spaces, in the choices others made. But now she had a home that was hers too. The first night in the new house was special. They made pizza together, got flour all over the kitchen, laughed until their bellies hurt. Afterwards, the 3 of them sat on the new sofa and watched a princess movie that Alice chose. And when the girl fell asleep between them, her head on Raphael's lap and her feet on Lucy's lap, he looked around that simple room and knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Months passed. Lucy excelled. At university, got excellent grades, made friends. She blossomed in ways Raphael never imagined possible. The tired, overwhelmed woman he had met on Christmas Eve was transforming into someone lighter, happier, more confident. Alice grew too. She became smarter, more talkative, more affectionate. She now called Raphael Dad instead of Uncle, and every time that happened, he felt his heart swell with gratitude. He never thought he would be a father, never believed he deserved it. But there he was, helping with homework, teaching her to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories. And Raphael discovered that being a father wasn't about blood. It was about being present. It was about choosing that child every day. It was about loving her unconditionally, even on difficult days, even when she tested limits, even when he didn't know what to do. It was about trying, failing, learning, and trying again. 6 months after that Christmas Eve that changed everything, Raphael woke up early on a Saturday. Lucy was still sleeping beside him, her hair spread across the pillow. He looked at her and felt that wave of love that still surprised him. How was it possible to love someone like this? How was it possible that this woman, who could have chosen not to trust him, had opened her heart and her life? He got up carefully, not to wake her, and went to Alice's room. The girl was sleeping, hugging the teddy bear, the same one she had offered him that first night. Raphael sat on the edge of the bed and just watched. That small child, with her impossible kindness, had saved his life. She didn't know it. She probably would never fully know. But it was true. Alice opened her eyes and smiled when she saw him. "Good morning, Dad." "Good morning, Princess." "Can I make pancakes today?" "Of course, let's wake up Mommy and we'll make them together." They woke Lucy with kisses and laughter, and the 3 went to the kitchen. They made pancakes, got everything messy, burned the first ones, got the next ones right. They ate at the kitchen table, with Alice telling invented stories and Lucy laughing at every absurdity. And Raphael looked at that scene, so simple, so ordinary, and realized that was everything. That was exactly what he had searched for his whole life without knowing it. It wasn't money. It wasn't success. It wasn't recognition. It was that. It was love. It was belonging. It was having people who cared if he was sad, who wanted to be with him, who chose him every day, just as he chose them. That afternoon, while Alice played in the backyard and Lucy studied in the living room, Raphael received a call from Mark. "Raphael, I need to tell you something." "Go on." "The Japanese want to expand the partnership. They're offering more than we imagined, but there's a condition." "What is it?" They want you back. They say they need your leadership. They're willing to double the investment, but only if you get completely involved again. It means traveling, constant meetings, total dedication. Raphael looked out the window. He saw Alice chasing butterflies, heard Lucy humming as she read, and he had no doubt. Tell them no. Raphael, I said no, Mark. My answer is no. If they want to expand, great. But it will be with you in leadership, or with another partner. I've already made my choice, and it's here. Mark sighed. You've changed. I have. For the better. Maybe you're right, and I've been wrong all these years. It's not about right or wrong, Mark. It's about priorities, and mine have changed. They hung up and Raphael went back to the yard. Alice ran to him immediately, asking him to play. He picked her up and spun her around, hearing her laughter echo. Lucy came out, smiled when she saw the two of them and came to join them. And there, in that simple backyard of an ordinary house in Peckham Rye, Raphael Meadows finally found what he was looking for. It wasn't in luxurious apartments or sophisticated restaurants. It wasn't in bank accounts or property deeds. It was in the small hands of a girl who had offered a teddy bear to a stranger. It was in the tired but sincere smile of a woman who had decided to trust again. It was in the love that is built day after day, choice after choice, sacrifice after sacrifice. He had been publicly rejected on Christmas Eve, humiliated and broken, but from that brokenness, something new was born, something true, something worth more than any fortune. And when Raphael lay down that night, with Lucy beside him and the certainty that Alice was sleeping safely in the next room, he finally knew what peace was. Not the peace that comes from the absence of problems, but the peace that comes from being exactly where you're supposed to be, with the right people, making the right choices, living the life that truly matters. And it all began because a girl in a red dress reached out to a stranger and asked why he was crying. That simple gesture, that pure empathy from a child, opened a door Raphael didn't even know existed. A door to a life he never imagined possible. A door to love, to family, to belonging. Years later, when Alice grew up and asked how she and Raphael met, he would tell the story with tears in his eyes. He would tell about the darkest night of his life that became the beginning of the greatest light. He would tell about a brave girl who saw someone suffering and decided to help, and about how sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest gestures. But that was for the future. For now, Raphael simply lived. He woke up every morning grateful. He worked enough to provide, but not to the point of losing what mattered. He had dinner with his family, read stories, gave goodnight kisses, and slept knowing he had done the right thing. He had learned that love is not found, it is built, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day, and he was willing to continue building for the rest of his life. Because finally, Raphael Meadows was no longer alone. He had a home, he had a family, he had love, and there was nothing in the world worth more than that. Lucy's original yellow house was now rented to another needy family at a symbolic price. Raphael had insisted on it because that house had given him everything. It was only fair that it also gave someone else the chance to start over. And in the new house, on a living room wall, Raphael hung a photo. It was from that first night of the impromptu dinner in the restaurant staff room. Someone from the restaurant had taken it without them noticing. In the photo, Alice seriously divided the chicken, Lucy smiled tiredly, and Raphael looked at the two with an expression of pure astonishment, as if he couldn't believe it was real. Whenever he looked at that photo, Raphael remembered where he came from, the darkness he was in, the abyss that almost swallowed him, and how two people, a woman and a child who had nothing, gave him everything. And he promised, every day, to honor that gift, never to take it for granted, never to forget that love is a choice, and that he would choose them always because in the end, it didn't matter how many millions he had lost, it didn't matter how many deals he had let pass, it didn't matter what others thought or said. What mattered was that when he closed his eyes at night, he heard Lucy's soft breathing beside him, and knew Alice was sleeping safely in the next room. What mattered was that he was no longer alone. What mattered was that he had a purpose. What mattered was that he was loved. And that, Raphael discovered, was everything. It was absolutely everything. The end. Dear listeners, we hope Raphael, Lucy, and Alice's story has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of transformation and true love, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what moment most resonated with you in this story. Was it Alice's courage in approaching a stranger, Lucy's generosity in opening her home, or Raphael's decision to choose love above all else? Every day, we bring intense and emotional stories like this, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and make us reflect on what truly matters in life. Don't miss the next episodes. We'll be waiting for you here, with more stories that will make you feel, think, and believe in the power of love. Until next time, and remember, it's never too late to start over and choose what truly matters.